I've started recording. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, if you want to count down or do whatever you want to do.
Okay. All right. In three, two, one. Hey there. Welcome to the Sorry I Like This podcast. My name is Caleb, and I'm joined by my co host Ezra here. And we are going to be diving into some really incredible stuff in terms of the video game industry that has happened in the past 2 weeks. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to being able to get to dive in and talk about all this stuff. So, how you doing today, Ezra?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, we've got a bunch of like crazy stuff that happened on the more business side of
Mm-hmm.
games, but then also last week, that was a crazy week for video games. Like
Yeah.
especially in 2023, this year has had non-stop amazing releases, but to see
Yep.
both Mario Wonder and Spider-Man 2, which we'll be talking about later in the show, both of
Yep.
those come out on the same day, that's crazy. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be. I'm this. Usually, when we plan out these podcast episodes, it's usually like a 50% like news and then 50% either like overall general topic of like a review. Um,
Yeah.
but this time around, because there was so much that happened in terms of releases, this one's probably going to be bulkier in the review section than it is in the news. But we still
Yeah.
have a lot of incredible stuff to talk about with news,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to be a really incredible podcast today. So, without further ado, I think we should start talking about the big news that we got, and it's not just news, biggest news of like the past 2 weeks. This
Yeah.
has been something that's been ongoing for I don't know. I want to say like
A year.
at least 6 months.
A year.
Yeah, it's been going on for a very long time, and it's that Xbox has finally acquired um, Activision and Blizzard,
Yep.
which is
King.
huge.
Don't forget King. King is
And King. Yeah.
that is a massive chunk of the value that the acquisition provides for sure.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think about because now, you know, the whole video game industry is going to shift, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to the biggest titles. Activision Blizzard don't only just have big titles of their own studio; they're the big titles of of the whole video game industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when Xbox acquired Bethesda and Elder Scrolls, and Fallout, two big titles, two big juggernauts are now under Xbox's roof. And now Xbox is about to get a whole bunch of other titles
Yeah.
under their roof. And, and we'll dive into, how it should affect the industry and everything. But
Yeah.
the bottom line is the EU has approved it. It's gone through the FTC. Basically, now Xbox has acquired them, and
Yeah.
it took a really long time, a lot of back and forth, a lot of PlayStation, Sony trying to block this
Flying
acquisition,
Jim Ryan, right? That's what
and
they called him.
and I don't know how far we'll dive into this part aspect of it today, but let's just say I don't think it turned out well in Sony's favor to be so. How do we put it?
Yeah, that's putting it mildly, I think.
Transparent.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's the way to put it. And it's like really. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that a little bit, but um, needless to say, I think this is both exciting and a little concerning. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
um
it's one of those things that inspires both. intrigue and despair, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, I don't know. I think without further ado, I think we should. What do you think, Ezra? What do you
Yeah.
think of the acquisition and how you think it's going to play into the larger gaming industry?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, but I think, it's worth emphasizing like Call of Duty and Candy Crush alone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Would make up the entire value of this $69 billion
$69. Yeah,
active that would have been crazy. That would have been a
that would
steal.
have been crazy.
Those two franchises alone would make
Hmm.
up the entirety of that $69 billion acquisition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less than that, but still, like the value of those two IPs being under any given company is so massive,
Hmm.
and because for us, we're definitely like we skew a little bit more core gamer, especially me. Like I tend to play more like JRPG and like the furthest towards the mainstream AAA sphere would be like a Zelda or a Spider-Man. Um,
Hmm.
but I mean, the vast majority of people who buy video games buy like maybe one or two games a year, and often that game is COD.
Yep.
And like they'll buy a console just so they can play COD with their friends every year, and
Yep.
that's like a huge part of the games market. And so but there's also like the entirety of Blizzard's IP, right?
Yep.
Which does serve that more core gamer environment for sure.
Right.
Not to mention, I mean, it's kind of funny that Crash and Spyro are now owned by Xbox, right? That
Yeah.
these former Sony PlayStation exclusives are now under
It's so
the
crazy to think about.
Microsoft umbrella, and that uh, I mean I think uh, the nice thing from my perspective is like we know Phil Spencer's modus operandi, like we know his general way of going about things is to just sort of hands off on most of the studios under his
Hmm.
leadership. And so if that means like, hey, we're gonna let you guys make a Crash sequel, a Spyro sequel, like we'll let you do what you want, and we'll make you make those games. That's potentially one of the best case scenarios for those IPs. It's a bit of a shame that they might not be on PlayStation, but that gets into an argument about exclusives that is beginning to be a little bit more vague, I guess. Just
Hmm.
because, like, I mean, the last time we saw a big moment of exclusivity across, like in a multi-platform game, was the Spider-Man stuff in Avengers, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't think of any stuff that
And
wasn't like hyper specific, like there this needs to for this very specific reason this thing can't come to this platform. Like it's
well,
yeah.
the thing is, though, well, yes, yeah, that it has been. I wouldn't say it's been so much with that, what's one game though that has been doing that for several years? It's Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Call of
No.
Duty has had
Huh?
several PlayStation exclusive skins. Not only that, like access to betas early. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know
Yeah.
they have gotten so much from this deal, which is so much from prior deals with Activision, that now they're big moneymaker. I mean, it's not their biggest moneymaker, but it's a pretty decent moneymaker, especially when it comes to that exclusive in-game
Yeah.
stuff, because it's a selling point for the PlayStation, and now that's being taken away from them, and we're going to probably see that be mirrored
Yeah.
on Xbox. You know what I'm saying? Because it's
Yeah.
not going to change. They're going to do that. They're going to do the same formula
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
for Xbox, because they used to do that with Xbox, and then they went to
Yeah.
PlayStation, and now it's back to
Yeah.
this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And now this is a
Activision.
true acquisition.
Yeah. Yeah. Activision was definitely playing favorites. Like,
Mm.
whoever's having the better generation, we're gonna side with them. And now that they're under the Xbox umbrella, there's very much the okay. There's no reason to pick and choose anymore.
Mm.
I think the other thing worth considering is that Xbox has talked a few times in response to the idea that COD would be a lesser experience on PlayStation going forward. For one thing, I'm not sure they ever signed anything about COD remaining multi-platform. I know that they've made some kind of agreement with Nintendo, but that seems arbitrary at
Yeah, it's
best. That
wild to
seems
think about, but
that seems like that seems more like maybe not pandering, but sort of a weird like tactic to draw attention away from the PlayStation side of things.
right. Well, yeah, it's absolutely a tactic right there, because
Yeah.
I remember when this got announced, I was like, oh, this is totally just so they can get. They're like, okay, PlayStation, you want to be so difficult? We'll go over to our friends over at Nintendo,
Yeah.
and we'll strike a deal to make you look bad, and make us look like, oh yeah, we're willing to be
Yeah.
open, and with it, and that, because that was their whole argument of like,
Yep.
we'll be able to pr- basically we'll be able to share still. You know what I mean? And now, well, we'll see what happens, but
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is that was definitely a tactic to show the courts.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
and
think.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I I was just gonna add like I think there's the argument for exclusives that I think I actually would tend to agree with just in terms of like the evidence for it is that if you have a console exclusive, it's so much easier to make that the best it can be on that platform, and Spider-Man 2 is a really good example of like Insomniac did so much to make that game run as well as it possibly could in a sea of super unoptimized multi-platform titles for next gen. And
Mm,
and I think I think the concern that I would have for like PlayStation COD players is to say like, hey, you do realize that Activision or that Xbox is going to prioritize development on Xbox hardware, right?
mm-hmm.
Not saying that they won't put any resources into
Right.
PlayStation development, but they are certainly, I mean, Xbox is already built on kind of a Windows framework.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely the greater potential for Xbox to, have a, even if it's not intentional, to just have a better version of COD, or whatever
Right.
ActiBliz game gets released. And yeah, I think that's like, to me, it's one of those things where they can say all they want. Hey, we feel that we did the best that we could, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, look at us, we're the good guys, we're still releasing these multi-platform. And to some extent, I would tend to give them credit for that. But when it eventually happens, and I'm sure that it will, that COD has an inferior release on PlayStation for even again, just like graphical performance metrics, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be
I
that
get,
would be my like, okay, yeah, no, this was all just posturing.
you know, I don't know if it's going to affect performance wise. I really, really do think deep down it's going to go into early access to certain
Yeah.
events, certain, you know what I mean,
Oh yeah. I mean,
maybe
that
even releases.
to me that's kind of a
Um,
given. Um it's sort of like the old, I mean, yeah, we were just talking about this, like the old like exclusive, or like 1 month exclusive map packs and stuff like that
mhm.
for the 360 and the PS4. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I think the thing to remember is that COD is a guaranteed install base. Like, people
Mhm. Yeah.
play COD, and people who don't like COD will still buy COD every year.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, like, and that's very much like, however you feel about that, I have feelings about that. That's just the reality of the matter. And so for
Yep.
Xbox to basically, I mean, that is an instance where that this acquisition was such a startlingly large amount of money, like $69 billion, almost $70 billion went into
Mhm.
this acquisition. That is very quickly going to start seeing returns for them.
Yeah.
And part of this is they haven't. I mean, Bobby Kotick is still at the helm because they're kind of transitioning right now. Hopefully,
Yeah.
he's out of there sooner rather than later. Um, and I mean, yeah, I definitely have mixed feelings,
Yeah.
just because it's one of those things where Microsoft has definitely kind of already gone through the sort of growing pains of, oh, we have a toxic workplace culture, we need to sort this out, and that kind of thing. Like, they've already done a lot of that processing and making it a better place to work. So, it's always going to be a constant improvement. So
Mhm.
in that aspect, I'm like, hey, that's great. Maybe some of these devs can, be under better working conditions
Right.
than they would have been.
Yeah. Exactly. I really do wish, um, with this acquisition, if there's one good thing that comes out of it, get rid of the yearly releases.
Oh yeah,
I know it's controversial to say because that's huge, you
yeah,
know, but I think your quality will skyrocket.
yeah. I mean,
I really do think.
wasn't like one of the highest rated Call of Duties the one that released after they took a year off? Am I Am
I
I
don't think
making
they've
that
ever
up?
taken a year off.
I
No,
thought they took a
they haven't
year
taken.
off
Well, I mean, if
a
you
few
want to
years
think of
back.
the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare, but they have not. They were supposed to take a year off this year,
Huh.
and
They just
they.
weren't willing to do it.
So this year is very controversial, which is why I don't want to buy this newest one.
Yeah.
Originally last year, with Modern Warfare 2 releasing, um, they gave the reins to Sledgehammer to develop a essentially Remind, if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan,
Yeah.
uh, type of package where they wanted to do a extended DLC for Modern Warfare 2 that would come out this time around because it's Call of Duty's 20th anniversary, I think.
Oh, okay.
So they wanted to do a little bit of a celebration of everything. So there was going to be a bunch of old maps coming back, specifically from Modern Warfare, the original Modern Warfare 2. So it was supposed to be like the celebratory thing that they quickly repasted a couple months, like I'd say 8 months ago, somewhere around there, and said, no, we're going to be making Modern Warfare 3. It's going to be called Modern Warfare 3.
I
So
see.
technically, this is a DLC for
That's
Modern Warfare
wonderful.
2,
Yeah.
wrapped in Modern Warfare 3 so they can, make money. That's the
Yeah.
best way to put it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way to. And honestly, I would have respected a lot more of a DLC celebration package to stall
Yeah.
out to whatever release
Yeah.
is actually next, because I've been wanting a them to take a year off, because I think in the long run it'll save a lot of fans, because a lot of fans are getting so tired of these year releases
Yeah.
and nothing being improved,
Well,
and it's
yeah.
really starting to show.
I mean, it's the biggest kind of. I think that the way that COD's kind of release cadence, the way it kind of made sense in my head for the longest time is like it's a bit like, all of the different, however many millions of versions there were of Street Fighter 4, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
the sort of, oh, we're gonna update this a year, and maybe you get a few, like you get a new like 6 hour campaign, and then you get the new maps that we have and some new gameplay mechanics and stuff, and that's kind of your yearly update in some way. With Warzone in the picture, that stops making any sense, because a yearly update is very much also a yearly PvP update.
Mm-hmm.
And with Warzone being entirely PvP, it
Yeah.
stops making sense that they would sort of force a yearly release cadence for Call of Duty games when, I mean, Warzone itself is such a moneymaker, but they could also do something in Warzone once a year that updated it in some
Right.
way that they could make money off of. It's not just the like yearly single player COD doesn't make any sense. Not
Yeah.
anymore. It might have used
No.
to, but it certainly doesn't anymore.
Well, not only that, exactly. That's the big thing. And even when you play these, you know, games, they're so anymore. These campaigns are so brief.
Yeah.
Um, and while I really enjoyed Modern Warfare 2's campaign, and I thought its difficulty was really engaging, like there was a really good difficulty balance in it, it still left thing like there was a lot of things where I'm like, this story didn't feel finished. You
I
know what I
believe it.
mean? And it's needless to say, with Xbox, coming and taking over, I do think there are some really good pros.
Yeah.
Of it could really help quality on some really you know, struggling games, not really struggling financially, but struggling quality wise. Um, and that includes Overwatch 2. You know what I'm saying? Which has been a huge mess. And I don't play Overwatch 2, but I've been following what's been going on there, and it hasn't been pretty. Well, let me tell you about that. And so I'm hoping with this whole restructuring that um we can get some more
Yeah.
refinement.
Yeah.
And I think in some aspects, well, yes, it does suck that a independent, you know, what do you call them? It wouldn't be
Third
a
party.
developer.
They're
Yeah,
a
just
third
like
party
a
publisher.
third party publisher. Yeah, it does suck that a third party publisher is no longer third party and it has been acquired, and it's not so great in that aspect of competition. I do think in some retrospect does help if it was going to go to anyone. I like it better with Xbox than I do with Sony, and that's coming from an actual Sony fan because it promotes a little bit of a battle, what I mean, of competition because I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things why I was totally not on Sony's side in this whole acquisition was the fact that they're like, "Oh, you can't acquire this because essentially we didn't acquire this." Let's just put it that way, because they've got so many exclusives and they just took a text, like Xbox took a page out of their textbook and they did not like it. And so
Yeah.
I, and as far as my final thoughts on it, I think that it has some pros and it has some
Yeah.
concerning cons.
Yeah.
Like we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to see where we go with it.
Yeah. I
What do you
mean,
think?
yeah, if Xbox wasn't a console manufacturer, I wouldn't have as many concerns.
Hmm.
If we lived in like a kind of open platform, everything plays on everything industry, I wouldn't be concerned. That's not the industry we are. That's not the hand we are dealt.
Hmm.
And so I do share those concerns of, like, I don't like the continued consolidation of massive corporations. I don't like the idea of the lines becoming harder and more strictly enforced between platforms,
Hmm.
because Xbox and PlayStation don't tend to play super nice with each other.
Yep.
And yeah, aside from Minecraft, right, which is kind of the only unifying game in
Hmm.
existence, right? Maybe you could make an argument for like a GTA 5, but I think it really is Minecraft that's kind of the only one. Um,
Yeah. I think universally over these past few years, Minecraft doesn't die,
yeah.
and and
Oh, yeah.
whether I've never played Minecraft, but I respect like I've watched plenty of gameplay on it, and I think it's really cool. But
Well, and
I've never played
Minecraft,
it, and I think,
yeah.
but there's no question to me the significance of it, and I love how it's kind of like Minecraft's like a metaphor of what we, the gaming industry should be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like, what?
unironically, yeah. There's like, it releases on everything that functions, right? It's
Hmm.
playable on basically anything. I can't think of it's getting to the only thing that has surpassed Minecraft in terms of versions, I think, is the original Doom, because people get that to
Hmm.
run on like a tractor. That's unironically a sorry.
Yeah.
And so, you get all of the different like versions of Minecraft that can play anywhere, anything can run it, and it's like, man, I wish more. I wish I could play Tears of the Kingdom on my PS5. Like
Yeah.
that would be great. Or I wish I could play Spider-Man 2 on my Switch. Theoretically, it is something like that where it's like
Hmm.
it is a shame that we do live in this ecosystem, and this acquisition only really serves to further widen that
Yeah.
divide. And yeah, I mean, we are very much seeing a development where it's like, I'm not sure that Square Enix is going to be its own company by the end of 2025, right? Whether they're
Hmm.
bought out by. I mean, it was weird because, Disney was in the news recently for kind of.
Weren't they wanting EA? Was
Well,
that it?
so they were. I Yeah, I think that was kind of the first name that was floated because they were talking
Hmm.
about like, yeah, we don't really have a strong foothold in games, and I thought it was kind of strange, like, oh, Square Enix isn't being floated as part of this. I wonder why, because that is a pre-existing relationship
Right.
that goes back before Square Enix was Square Enix. That's
Right.
back before the Enix merger. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things
Squaresoft.
where
Yeah.
Square is very much like kind of and they recently sold off a bunch of their Western IPs.
Hmm.
They're really like they have some Japanese like smaller Japanese titles that they have, but I mean really they are the Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts company right now. That is
Hmm.
pretty much it. Um Again, they've got other stuff.
Hmm.
But it is one of those things where it's like, Sony bought Bungie, which has released one game in the last what, like 6 or 7 years, right? For $12 million.
Yeah.
And Square Enix continues to make Final Fantasy a PlayStation first franchise.
Yep.
So to me it's like, okay, I'm not sure Square Enix is getting out of 2025 still its own company. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's
The
completely off
only
base.
thing, yeah, I mean, mm, you know, yeah, yeah,
And yeah, like I think, and there has been a lot said about Phil Spencer really wanting to buy Nintendo. That he kind of sees that
yeah.
as a life achievement in some way. And that to
Would
me is like, that would be crazy in a lot
Yeah,
of
it would
ways.
be.
Um, but it would
I don't think
also,
it'll ever happen.
it probably
I'll
won't
be honest
happen.
with you.
I think Nintendo's more likely to be bought out by another Japanese company than they are to be bought out
Hmm.
by Microsoft. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's the long and the short of it.
Well,
I would
yeah,
be less surprised if Xbox bought Sega, because that would be like, oh, Sega's a third party. They're not as entrenched. They're not as big. They've got however many franchises. Like they would be buying the IPs more than the brand of Sega, where Nintendo is like, that is a juggernaut unto itself.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's diving in a whole other topic,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
yeah, that's going a bit far outside of the scope of Microsoft
But it
acquisition.
brings up a lot of interesting thoughts,
Yep.
and I think that the long and short of it is this is the beginning of a new age of Xbox, and we'll see just how it's going to affect not this generation, but even next generation. I think we'll see more on it, but
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And speaking of, in terms of what's coming up with Xbox, they actually. So this is kind of moving on into our next
Yeah.
topic. Um, they just did a partner showcase. So
Yep.
ironically, not
Yeah.
not what they own,
Yeah.
but what their partners have.
Yeah.
Like third party developers and stuff. Did a partner showcase. Wasn't too massive. Not too
No,
much happened there.
not at all.
Neither of us really watched it. Usually we try to be on top of gaming events and stuff, but I don't think either of us saw it as a big showcase for us at,
Yeah.
of what we like.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
and
there.
I guess to add to that, like an Xbox partner preview doesn't lend the same weight as like a Nintendo Direct partner showcase, because
Exactly, yeah.
Nintendo Direct partner showcases, they kind of have a hit and miss track record. State of plays kind of have the same thing. Xbox doesn't really have like a program, so to speak.
And
They
that
don't have like an established like brand that they have. So like an Xbox partner preview, it's like I don't know I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of this.
and that's exactly it. You bring up the track record. You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
from I'll just put it right here. I think when we got to the age of the next generation. So like
Yeah.
right when the next generation was going to, we really followed what was going on, even when it came down to these partner showcases. And
Yep.
while yes, you know, this is different from an Xbox showcase. An
Yeah.
Xbox showcase is massive and it's really fun to watch. But I could tell you, I've watched partner showcases over the years, and I think this is the first year I did not watch. I would say probably this is actually the first time I didn't watch a partner showcase because I just
Sure.
waste my time most of the time.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's no it kind of does sound a little disrespectful to the games that are showcased, but it's just
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like,
they feel more like spotlights.
yeah, they
I guess that's
feel,
my best way to
yeah.
put it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say that like a Sony state of play is usually that much better. Um, I will say I
No, I agree.
think, yeah, aside from like the odd like, oh, FF7 remake is coming to PS5 or stuff like
Mhm.
that. I will say I think Xbox. I mean, part of the problem is that Xbox's brand is so kind of detached from that like big blockbuster release, right?
Yeah.
Because Starfield was the first one they had in quite a while.
Yeah,
It's
since Halo Infinite, and
like,
you know,
and that doesn't dismiss all of the other cool things that I think Xbox is doing,
hmm
but I do think it, to me, kind of illustrates like, okay, we are, excuse me, we are kind of in a situation with an Xbox showcase where you kind of go into it hoping for a surprise. And I mean, I think we did kind of get a surprise this time around, with the the Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater
yeah,
kind of, I guess Gamatsu refers to it as a first in-engine look trailer, and
yeah,
yeah, it looks good. There's not much to
yeah.
say about it. It looks
The
solid.
it looks early, but it
Yeah,
looks promising. I
yeah,
guess that's the best way to put it. Um, it is under the Unreal Engine 5, which I'm really excited for to see. just the gaming industry as a whole
Yeah.
utilizing it more.
More
Because I think
games. Yeah.
the UE4 like was so, I don't know if revolutionary is the right term, but it was so massive in the
Yeah,
gaming industry.
it was one of those things where you started to see developers shift to it, and people were
I think
like,
we got better
"Oh,
games for them
yeah." Like
because of it.
even a game, even a game like Shin Megami Tensei 5, which I would say is pretty heavily unoptimized for the Switch.
Hmm.
Even that game is like, "Oh, because this is such because the devs know how to work with this." It's pretty clear to me like, "Oh, they were able to squeeze as much as they needed to out of this, and it it works well because of that." And even like a Kingdom Hearts 3 situation where they had to kind of transition out from Luminous and into, or yeah, it's
Yeah, I
the
think it was
Luminous
Luminous.
engine.
Yeah.
And they kind of transitioned out of that and into UE4. Like, we probably would not have gotten a game that, you and I would say is as great as Kingdom Hearts 3 without that transition. Um,
Hmm.
because it was pretty obvious that the Luminous engine was designed for one game, exactly one game, and that was Final Fantasy
Hmm.
13. And they got more out of that engine than they had any right to. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, there have been moments where UE5 games are not
Well,
in
I don't
the
think we've.
best state on console
Uh,
necessarily, but I am excited to see as time goes on the kind of optimization of this
and that's the thing
engine.
with UE5. It's going to take a little while. I think a little while
Yeah.
longer for it to actually start showing. Well, yes, there is those smaller titles, like you said, that have utilized UE5. I don't think it's unlocked its potential, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Um, the basically, I did enjoy the trailer. The game itself, I still have to go through the Metal Gears series.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow, tongue twisted there. But I actually do have plans to eventually get to it. I
Nice.
don't. That does sound kind of like, oh, it's in your backlog. It's never going to happen. No, honestly, with the even though uh, apparently the reception for the collections haven't been so great, I'm kind of tempted to make this time the actual starting point. So I think you might be hearing from me soon about a Metal Gear deep dive. Not gonna lie,
Nice. That'd be
because
cool. That'd be cool to hear
I've
about.
always been interested in the series. So
Yeah.
it seems like it's time.
The biggest
So I
problem is
think
you have to figure out how you're going to play Metal Gear Rising.
yeah, this is a lot of factors to consider on that, but the
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I
because isn't
would.
it.
So it's a PS3, Xbox 360 PC game. So you could get it on
Yes,
PC if you have a PC, but
it's the age old Final Fantasy 13
indeed.
conundrum.
Except, Final Fantasy 13 is backwards compatible on Xbox Series, so
Xbox, yeah,
which is kind of weird.
which is ironic,
Um,
but
but yeah, it's
uh,
I think Snake Eater. I mean, I was saying this to you before the show. Snake Eater is the most critically acclaimed Metal Gear game there is. I think even five. hasn't had that like staying power the way that
Mm-hmm.
Snake Eater has. And I would say that Konami has kind of a lot to prove with this specific release.
Mm-hmm.
And Silent Hill, I would say Silent Hill is definitely a part of that conversation.
Oh yeah.
Um, because I think Resident Evil has been kind of a shock to the industry's system of Capcom going, "Hey, we're just going to make these remakes as good as we possibly can." And they have been extremely well received. And Metal Gear is certainly one of those IPs that is very much from that sort of end of PS1 into kind of the end of the GameCube era classics, right? And so for that franchise to start kind of picking up and saying, okay, we're going to start remaking these, it is both kind of, okay, good on you for at least recognizing what's in your catalog, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And also, are you actually
But
going to be able to pull it off, right?
exactly, yeah.
And
Sets a high
Konami
expectation.
and Konami doesn't exactly have the best reputation in the video games industry, so yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much sums up kind of our feelings towards it. I am
Yeah.
looking forward to it, and I hope we actually get to see more at the Game Awards. I think that'd be pretty cool to see at the Game Awards.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
You
see.
know,
I again, I think it's one of those things that like this specific trailer that we got
mhm,
is like that is so early in development
yeah,
that we still have really no idea when this is slated for. And
yeah,
so, I'm not entirely counting on it at the Game Awards. I think it would be cool,
mhm,
but I'm not counting on it. Um,
yeah,
I think it's maybe more likely that it shows up at next year's Summer Game Fest,
yeah.
but who knows?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as that kind of concludes a little bit of our news segment. Yeah, there's been some like smaller headlines, but nothing's been too
Yeah.
big in that regards. Of like I was telling Ezra before we started today, I was like, we're in the time of year where there's not much gaming news. There's a lot of gaming releases.
Yep.
So there's a
Yep.
lot of it's great on our review end of our
Mhm.
podcast, but it's as far as news end of the podcast, we don't really. We're in kind of a little bit of I would call almost a dry spell
Yeah, a bit of a dry
of
spell.
we've taken care of all the summer like big events, and the TGS I would say is the true marker of the end of that
Yeah.
little section in
Yeah.
terms of news.
And even TGS is like that's very
Right.
much a smaller. You're gonna get like maybe 5 or 6 major announcements, and that's kind of
Yeah.
it. Um,
Yeah.
and even then, you're like the major announcements are for games that might not even come overseas.
Right.
which is
Exactly.
which is a different discussion, but that's very much like kind of end of May to end of September is like that's where a lot of games news is concentrated. And
Mhm.
we'll get some stuff at the Game Awards. We'll get some stuff at I think there's some stuff kind of early. I mean, there are like various Comic Cons and stuff that happen
Right.
where there's like, oh, they brought, they had the Final Fantasy VII panel,
Yeah, cast, yeah.
and so there,
And
there's
yeah.
like random little bits of stuff, but
Yeah.
especially given how stacked January and February are for next year
Yeah.
at least, like I would say in terms of games news, we are definitely in that like release heavy period, and we probably won't be out of it until closer to like March or April next year.
Exactly. And I think we'll have a ton of news in December.
Yeah.
And not only just from the Game Awards, but I think it'll have a trickle down effect. I think the other type of news that we would get is more so on delays, which we
Yeah.
never want to talk about.
Yeah,
But
we're in the season of either like smaller announcements or delay announcements.
exactly. So, as far as that goes, yeah, it was a little shorter on our news end this
Yeah.
time around. But it allowed some more, I would think, some more thoughtful discussion
Yeah.
on at least those two topics that we had. And,
I would hope.
with that said,
we do have
I
one
am,
more
we
one
are
more
doing
thing.
our segment, our podcast segment here, where our transition segment, and where every so often, Ezra will have a segment that he'll want to showcase, and then there's a segment that I like to call Trailer Watch. That's right. We are in a trailer watch. I'm not joking. This is a actual trailer watch, and I'll go into the odds of what I think is going to happen and when it's going to happen.
I'm
So,
just
um,
I think you really dodged a bullet with the TGS thing. I just have to throw that out there.
and I would like to say I have a pretty good track record, but my most recent trailer watch was not the greatest. Now this was before the podcast, but I will say I struck out hard at TGS.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you
I
that one.
there I wouldn't bring this up except you were so sure. Like
I was so sure. Yeah.
the level to which this man thought we were for sure getting a Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer at TGS. And I was like, dude, I think that sounds awesome. I'd be so down. I can see where you're coming from, but I wouldn't get your hopes too high up. And you were like, no, this is happening. This is happening.
I saw
for
those
sure.
stars aligning and they quickly passed through, and I was like, well, that ain't happening. And here's the thing. It is
he sends me
you'll
the text
be
of the
quick to
clown
know.
makeup
Yeah,
immediately.
exactly. Yeah, that clown makeup was like put on hard. Like that was like, yeah, it was all over.
Yeah.
Just With that said, though, it is no secret, and you'll learn on this podcast that Ezra and I are pretty big Kingdom Hearts fans.
Yeah. Yeah, we
And
kind
so,
of
well,
stayed
this
away
is
from it because we'll just start talking and never stop.
exactly. So this is a little slippery slope, but we'll talk. I think this isn't so big of a conversation, but I think it is something that I think both of us want to highlight. But and it's for a mobile game, which is kind of crazy to think about because I don't think we would be doing a trailer watch for a mobile game otherwise.
Yeah. Oh,
For
yeah.
Kingdom Hearts Missing Link. And I'll explain why this is such a big deal. But to the Kingdom Hearts community, we already kind of dived into it. The despair between TGS to a couple days ago, it was bad. It was bad.
I mean, we're talking about the biggest Kingdom Hearts news of the year being the Sora amiibo.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the state of the Kingdom Hearts community right now.
Exactly. I mean, it has been a dry year, and Kingdom Hearts Missing Link was supposedly very close to being finished. Well, somewhat finished. Um, Back when they did their beta test in January. So
Yeah.
it's like we feel good about it, and then they did the beta test. It shouldn't be long now, and silence.
Nothing.
Nothing. No word on Cage
Absolutely nothing.
4. And it brought up concerns because not only did that, but you know the main creative director Tetsuya Nomura also you know made the comment of, "Oh, we got some news back in the fall that you know
The
has
future
changed
of
the
the
course of the franchise," and with the radio silence being followed by
yeah.
that, it was enough cause for concern. Now, there was a lot of feelings of, with Final Fantasy coming out, that maybe they didn't want the spotlight, and honestly, that is starting to look like that was the true
Yeah.
um, focus, the true reason behind that. But it did a little bit. I was like, it has to show a TGS. Either this mobile game or Cage 4 has to show. It
Yeah.
has to show because we need to know
I just yeah, I
if
mean
this franchise still exists.
yeah, I was very much saying like, hey, I don't even necessarily need a trailer. I just need somebody to tell me that Cage 4 isn't canceled.
Exactly.
That's kind of the headspace I was in. So
And this week we got that confirmation. We
I
did get that confirmation.
I mean, I don't know if we got hard confirmation that KH4 is still in development, but we know the series still
We know the
exists.
series still exists. And it all started with them quietly, quote unquote quietly, releasing a photo of Missing Link into and updating their profile banner on Twitter or X. Still going to call it Twitter.
Can we call it X Twitter? I think that
X
would be
Twitter.
funny. Yeah,
Okay.
X Twitter.
Um,
It used to be Twitter, and now it's X. It's layered.
yeah.
Anyways,
And and then followed by the next day another image saying coming soon. And that was enough confirmation for me. That was honestly all I needed. I'm
yeah,
like, this series still exists.
yeah.
That's all I needed.
Whatever happens, Missing Link releases sometime next year. Like, okay, fine.
But
It
us
still
Kingdom Hearts
exists.
fans are greedy at the same time.
Yeah.
Because not only that,
Give me more.
at the same time I felt like satisfied that finally I know this thing's existing, I instantly put on that clown makeup and was like, must mean we're getting news about a trailer. Must mean we're getting a trailer on KH4 soon. I mean, it was downward spiral. But the true trailer watch here has to be, and it's been confirmed by Nomura, that we are going to be getting news next week, sometime next week. And so I think it is highly possible. So now we're at 100% chance of news.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about that. But a trailer, I'd give a solid 75% chance we're getting a trailer next week. Now, you might think that's a little high.
Wait, a trailer for Cage 4?
Oh, no, not trailer for Cage 4.
Okay.
I mean, for Missing Link.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if you want to do this to yourself again.
Oh, no. I've learned my lesson, okay? But I think we will finally get a spotlight on it. I think we'll know.
It would be a little weird if we did get a trailer. I have to say, like, for them to say, "Hey, for Nomura to basically come out and say, hey, this, don't forget about us. We'll have more for you next week." Like, it would be a little like he was talking as if there were already plans in place.
Exactly.
So it would be a little weird to me to hear about those plans, and then for when it comes out, it's like, oh, that's you didn't have any footage to show me, like, because I don't even know if it would have to be like a edited trailer in that way, right? I think
Right.
I would just be more interested in like, oh yeah, like what does the game look like? Because we have some of the leaked beta test footage, but the only like officially released footage that we have is from that one trailer back at the 20th anniversary.
Right, the
And
20th anniversary showcase, which I will get on that in a second.
yeah,
But go ahead.
yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I I know that it's kind of a Pokemon Go clone, I guess, is kind of the idea. But beyond that, and I guess I should say, I also know that it's kind of built on the KH3 sort of systems, I guess, like the graphical style. But that's really it. And that's not inherently a bad thing. But I would be, I mean, watching a story trailer for a game like Missing Link doesn't exactly excite me. I'd rather just kind of get in there and play it and see if I'm going to follow it. But yeah, I think there's not a...
Hold on, sorry.
I was not expecting. Oh, that was great. Oh man. Oh, that was wonderful.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
My one of the apartments near me has an outdoor cat and does not like my cat. So
Nice.
it's a whole ordeal.
Nice.
But
Awesome.
all right.
Anyways,
where were we?
We were talking about Missing Link. I was sort of finishing up on like, I just want to know what the game is about.
Yeah. With that said, I think it is highly likely, not highly likely, that we shall know more on KH4 sooner rather than in my despair timeline when I thought, oh, we're not going to be finding out until maybe at most a year from now. I don't think that's... I think that's off the table now. I think we do know. We do find out within the next 6 months what that development is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So, yeah, with that said, let's move on to our review portion of the podcast. So this is essentially, we're going to... it's not necessarily a review portion. It's more like our main topic portion. But this is definitely a review portion. So we're definitely going to be deep diving on some things. One in particular is a mobile game as well. And it's a very popular mobile game that has been a shifted from being a small title to something being massive.
Yeah.
And it came, it didn't have that great of a launch, but, unfortunately a worldwide pandemic happened and we were all indoors. And the most perfect game for all of us to play during that time, to connect with friends and to also rage at them at the same time and get very into heated arguments, was none other than Among Us. And it took the gaming industry by storm during that time. It was huge. I guess I wouldn't say it's just a mobile game. It's a PC game too. I should give it justice as that. Justice to that
And
as
I mean,
well.
worth mentioning, it's also come out on every console.
On
So
consoles,
it's
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I shouldn't say it's specifically a mobile game, but you know, it's small.
it started out that
And
way. Yeah,
the development updates to keep this massive boom of a game was unfortunate. And it's not to discredit the developers in this regard because there's not many people working on this
yeah.
game.
I mean,
You know what I'm saying?
when Among Us won the year it kind of took off because it came out the year
Hmm.
before, but when it won at the Game Awards for I don't remember what award, the group of devs was like in this very tiny like crowded into this very tiny room,
Hmm.
and they were all like freaking out, and you could tell that like, and then you get like you cut over to like Neil Druckmann or something, and he's just like sitting in his office with a bunch of like bookshelves, and he's clearly like got wine nearby, and it's like the contrast of these two things is really funny. um
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, you've been playing the new map, right?
Yeah, I have. The I have been playing the new map. Basically, the new map has taken almost 2 years for it to come out, and
Yeah.
we've finally been able to get a new map. And the uh, the and it's pretty good so far. I like it. There's a lot of new stuff. Um, with it, is it my favorite map? No, but it's still got a lot to learn. And honestly, I'm really glad that they've switched it up a little bit. You know, and basically the big, is it worth it all these years later? I'd say so. And for me, it's really fun to see everybody kind of adapt again. You know,
Yeah.
as a game, I think it's fun to see nobody knowing where they're going, and it takes me back to those days. And I really like it. It's really fun. But
Nice.
honestly, that's kind of like a little bit of a brief review of Among Us. The Basically the next thing that we were going to talk about um, was we talked about it last podcast, but we're going to talk about it today after the fact because we talked about it, the midnight releases of these two games, but the
Yep.
specific one we you know we're going to talk about a little bit now, and it's Mario Wonder.
Yep.
And I think the overall, I know Ezra hasn't played it yet, but I've played it so far and I'm really enjoying it. I am having a blast of a time.
Yeah.
And I think that uh, the big thing for me was the the um the game itself has a lot of twists to it, and it's a lot of fun in that regard of of always switching up the formula, but also keeping with the formula.
Yeah.
That would be my best way to put it. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's it's got some crazy turns. I'm not finished with it at all, nowhere near, But as far as first impressions of it, I'm actually really enjoying it so far.
Good.
And my one critique is I wish we had, because in terms of multiplayer, I really wish Collision was on, because you could do a lot of
Yeah.
cool things in the previous Mario titles, and you know, no Collision, you can't really do much crafty things that I thought was a lot of fun. But it doesn't. There's so much other good things to say about this game that I don't think it outweighs it in any way. Um, is more my kind of opinion on it. I don't know. What do you think, Ezra? What from what you've seen so far,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
what do you think
think
about the game?
Mario Wonder has definitely surprised me in just the sheer amount of positivity that's come out about it,
Hmm.
because New Super Mario Brothers on the Wii was very much a kind of, I think a lot of people felt it was kind of out of left field because
Hmm.
3D Mario had been the craze up until that point, which is
Yeah.
understandable. So for them to kind of go back and say, "Hey, we're gonna refine the 2D model,"
Yep.
um, and then you got Wii, and then you got New Super Mario Brothers Wii, and all the subsequent games. And I think by the time Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe on the Switch came out, people were kind of like, I don't know if I mean, my feeling was very much like, I don't really know if I have a reason to buy a new 2D Mario game anymore. And that's
Yeah.
not because I thought like, oh, this is going to be a bad game. It was more, I just don't know if I have
Right. It
another
was the
new Super
standard
Mario
being set.
Brothers. Yeah, well, I just didn't know if I had another new Super Mario Brothers game in me.
Hmm.
So, and Super Mario Brothers Wonder, I was very much going into it like, how much can you really do with the Mario formula, right? That was very much
Right.
my kind of feelings about it.
Well, it keeps you on your toes because
Yeah.
you think everything's fine, and then everything gets chaotic,
Yeah.
and it's like, they do away with the time limit in this
Oh,
game, and I don't know,
interesting.
if you've seen that yet, but like the
I have seen as little Mario Wonder footage as possible for somebody who likes video
gotcha.
games. Like I haven't avoided it. I just haven't like been so.
Right.
I'm not the kind of Mario player who like needs to see the stuff. I'm like, hey,
Hmm.
that Mario game looks cool. I'm gonna play it, and I usually have a good time with it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm
and I
excited
think
to get my hands on it soon. I yeah.
yeah, and there's no problem, no wrong with that. I mean, I'm the same way in that regard. But the as far as uh, the the pacing of it, you would think it would slow it down because no longer there's the time limit. With the twist, it helps because everything speeds up,
Interesting.
and you have to quickly adapt, and I think that's so fun.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
far
fun.
of as far as level designs, nothing's. I can't definitively say, oh, this is very similar to the other one.
Okay.
Like even when you get to the twist, twist of those, maps, you're like, whoa, what's going on, and where do I need to go? You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
It's pretty fun, and I think that aspect of it is really nice. I will say, watching the trailers, there was a little bit of skepticism of, is this going to feel right? Is this going to feel like our
Sure.
traditional Mario? Because this is
Yeah.
really what these type of games are. It's supposed to be like the traditional Mario,
Yeah.
and I think it's captured it so far. We'll
Nice.
see. I'll see what happens with it, but I think, I I've gotten through the first um,
World or whatever.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, the first castle. Let's put it that way.
Okay, okay.
So I've played a decent amount of levels and gotten to the
Yeah,
the first castle and got that all done. So I really enjoy it. It's it's been a lot of fun.
nice.
So, um, but I do you think we're ready to move on or
I got really nothing else to say about Mario Wonder, and everything to say
okay?
about this next game.
Exactly. And this one has been the big one. This has been the
Yeah,
big juggernaut that both of us have been playing and has been devoting a lot of time to.
yeah,
And that is Spider-Man 2, and rightfully so. It
yeah.
has been a wonderful game. Ezra, what are your thoughts on the matter?
So I walked away from Spider-Man 2. So I guess I should say we are not going to talk about anything that wasn't shown in
Yeah,
trailers.
yeah.
Mostly because Caleb hasn't beaten it yet.
I have not finished the game yet. Yeah.
So I'm very much avoiding saying things, mostly for the surprise element. And I think the biggest, like, the word that comes to mind when I think about this game is sequel, in like the
Yep.
in its purest form, almost. Like, we in the games industry, it's actually a little bit rare nowadays to just get a sequel, right? It's
Hmm.
usually like, God of War Ragnarok is very much like the second half of a story. Um, you
Hmm.
could correct me on that if you want, but
No,
there's
I
stuff
wouldn't
like
say that.
there's stuff
Yeah,
like that
I would agree.
where The Last of Us Part Two is also a sequel, but it's sort of also doing its own thing. Like, you don't have a lot of just like, this is a sequel to the previous game, right? Because back in the day, I mean, the PS2 was basically an entire console full of trilogies, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so for for this game to come out and to not, it doesn't really, I wouldn't say it like rocks the boat in a lot of ways, right? I wouldn't say uh it kind I think my biggest kind of point against it is that it doesn't innovate very much,
Hmm.
which I say is kind of a point against it, but is like, that's also not a bad thing, because
Yeah, it's
I
yeah,
wanted more Spider-Man. I didn't want a different game. Um,
right.
so
And that's
yeah,
exactly what I've been feeling. Like on one hand, I don't feel like there's been much change to certain formulas
yeah,
in how the game goes, but it's also at the same time what I wanted.
yeah,
I wanted. There was one thing that there was some thoughts in my mind of like before going into this game of like, oh, I hope they keep the side missions the same way that they do. You know what I mean? It was
yeah,
you know, and I enjoy much of it of the games and like I should say the transition from one to Miles to this one feels almost wildly seamless.
yeah,
Like it's crazy to think about. Because I will say, just from the opening moments of this game, it almost feels like, and I said this with Miles as well, where it feels like they assume that you've played the previous one and that they are going from that point in terms of your combat level. Not necessarily combat level, but how you play the game. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah, for sure.
And they definitely did it with this time. And when I played Miles, I replayed one. so I went right into it. It felt like a great transition. I'm like, oh, I'm learning new abilities, but my old ones, you know,
Yeah, you still
are
have that like feeling.
exactly. I still have that feeling, and we get into Spider-Man 2, and I'm playing the opening few missions, and I'm like, why is this so hard? And I'm like, I'm trying
Yeah.
to get used to it all
Yeah.
again, and I'm like, but not only not I would say not another hour into the game, I started to feel like, oh, yep, this is where I left off at, and now I'm learning more
Yeah.
on top of that,
Well,
and it's like,
yeah, I mean, I would say my biggest um like the biggest single improvement that this game makes over the first two is in the combat.
mhm,
Like there and I mean, I want to go in depth so bad, but I will just say that like the boss fights in this game are one of the biggest surprises, and I would say hold up to like industry standard. This is a great boss fight
mhm,
tier of that kind of thing. Where in Spider-Man 1 especially, the boss fights were kind of carried by the characters in some way, where
mhm,
it's like, oh, I'm kind of putting up with this because it's Electro and it's Vulture and
right.
all these characters.
I think my big gripe with those fights were that it was very QTE heavy,
Yeah.
very quick
and
time event.
and this game, again, not to say too much about each specific fight, even stuff that is clearly like pulling from the first couple games in some way is still like the way that the systems interact with those things and the way that they've been changed in order to fit those things is honestly, it's one of those things where I'm like, I didn't know that they were going to be able to give me the same satisfaction as like an action, like a traditional action game
Yeah.
in my Spider-Man game, and they did. And I was so surprised and so delighted because I was getting my butt handed to me in
Yep.
some of these fights, and to have that
Yeah.
and that to be like kind of part of the fun and not like frustrating in that same way was so it was just such a delight, and
Mhm.
really like elevated the game beyond where I thought it could go. And I think it's one of those things where it's like people are going to debate, whether or not Spider-Man 1 is better than Spider-Man 2. They're just going to run circles around each other trying to
Yeah.
do that. And to me it's like, as much as I love the first Spider-Man game's narrative and the way that it establishes things and all of that, to me, I'm very much in the position where I'm like, for if I just wanted to go play a Spider-Man game, which one am I going to play? Two every time, and like again, the boss fights are such a big part of that, but even the regular combat kind of feeds into this. Yeah, that's my soapbox.
Yeah. I mean, it all feels seamless. Is
Yeah.
the thing, and the pacing of this game, as far as narrative wise, and I won't go into spoilers of that. Narrative versus open world aspect, it not only outshines what they did in one, but I feel like it's just to a perfection.
Yeah.
I feel like when there's moments where they leave you open to do side missions, it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense narratively. it feels, they're not giving you too much at one time for you
Yeah.
to take care. You know what I mean? Because that was kind of the thing of like the first Spider-Man. I remember distinctly playing the first one and being like to a point where I was like, oh my god, there was just so many side missions unloaded on me, and there is no way I'm playing them right now. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Well, there
And
was there was that, and it was like, wait, I have to wait to do stuff. I have to wait to like continue the main mission until I do this stuff. Like,
yeah,
isn't there like where's the sense of urgency? I think that was definitely like a struggle that specific game had, where it's like they would leave you off, and it would be like the urgency was just shot.
yeah, and exactly. I mean, that was one of my biggest gripes about the last game. I don't feel that at all with this one.
There
And if you
was
want to know why I have not, oh, go ahead.
there was one time towards the end where I felt it,
Okay.
but I won't say why. But there was one time towards the end where I was like, that was kind of a weird choice to open up the world to me. Game, I'm
Yeah.
not sure I agree with that, but that's a very small gripe. That's a very small gripe.
No, I get that. I'll probably have that moment. But for the most part, like everything just flows so much
Yeah,
smoothly. It's just it's been a fun game. It's been a fun game, and I think that you know I'm trying not to dive into a little bit of spoilers, but I'm trying not to dive into spoilers. But here's the thing: I am going to say it,
okay.
and this is a controversial take.
Uh-oh.
And it's not a controversial take on this game. It's actually more of a compliment on this game than it is. But I'm talking about the greater, Spider-Man, history.
Mythos, yeah.
Yes. I have never been a fan of Craven. I'm just putting
Ooh.
that out there. It is a huge controversial take. I know it.
Ooh.
I find him. I think he has some cool aspects, but for
Yeah.
the most part, Craven to me is not nearly as interesting of a villain as many other Spider-Man
Mm-hmm.
rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Um, the and that's a hot take. I get it,
Yeah.
but I will admit, like, Craven wasn't my selling point of this game. I'm not gonna lie.
You were coming to this game for Venom. Like there
I
was
was coming to this game for Venom, and I knew what I was coming for.
yeah.
But and this goes into the whole, you know, there's been such a push to have Craven in the movies that I'm like, I don't want him in the movies. I really don't. I
Yeah.
know that originally No Way Home was supposed to have Craven in it, and it was going to be a completely different movie. I'm glad they went the route they did,
Yeah. I mean
and I would have
No
been
Way Home
really
is a
upset
great
if they
game.
went the other route.
Or not
um,
No Way Home is a great movie, yeah.
and
Um
the Craven movie, I could care less about. I'll be honest, but the
I hope it's
that was
like as bad
before.
as Morbius.
Yeah, that was before I played this game. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go on and say that Craven is the best Spider-Man villain. I don't even think he's anywhere near that. But he's so much more menacing and more an interesting of a character
Yeah.
when in this game.
Yeah.
And he seems to pose a real threat. And that's something that the last game, well, yes, there was the formation of the Sinister Six, and Martin Lee was a really interesting villain.
Yeah.
Martin Lee gets sidelined after the first act
Yeah.
of that
Well,
game and doesn't come back.
he just kind of folds into the larger plot. Whereas,
Exactly.
yeah, Craven is definitely
He's
much.
the clear threat from beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Well, not to the end. I haven't played to the end.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I
sure there's a
get
Venom going to be the
it.
real threat at the end. But I feel like, for the majority of the 2/3 of this game,
Yeah.
having Craven as that uh, fixed point, it's made the game really fun.
Yeah.
And um, the to say that, though, it makes me wonder if it's really Craven that I really like out of this story, or it's more of who he's hunting and how they're involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I get
Yeah.
into the um to my thoughts of these characters are complementing Craven to make him much more of a bigger threat, but does
Yeah.
that mean I actually like Craven? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
More.
Well, yeah.
It's a thing of, you know, yes, I'm really loving the portrayal of him. I
Yeah.
don't know if I still love this villain, if that makes sense.
No,
So,
that makes sense. I think I will say that Craven does a really good job of being kind of he's kind of like how um he's it's a bit similar to how in the first like two phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, how Thanos was kind of portrayed as this kind of looming presence that was kind
mm,
of had its hands in everything and kind of everything was at the root of it a little bit. Craven definitely serves that purpose, so I don't think he's an especially interesting character,
mm,
but I do think that his presence serves the story quite well
yeah,
because of like the stuff that he does and the situations that he puts the characters in are so like they end up being so impactful, and I think
mm,
without that presence it wouldn't be possible.
yeah,
And again, there's some great stuff that we won't talk about this week.
yeah,
But yeah, there's some really good stuff that Craven kind of gets up to, and yeah, I think I think it's very much like yeah, I didn't really care for Craven as a character, and in that sense, he kind of suffers for me because both Martin Lee and Doc Ock were like so interesting and
yeah,
so like uh kind of valuable pieces of the story, but Craven
mm,
I think he does a good functional job in the narrative.
yeah.
I guess that's how I would
And
put
that's
it.
and that's my thing. It's like, yeah, I'm loving what they're doing with him, but he's
Yeah.
here's the thing. I really think that the best Spider-Man villains relate back to Peter Parker himself.
Yeah.
Not Spider-Man, but Peter Parker. and I
Or
and I've
Miles
always felt
Morales,
this
like
with
whoever's
or
under the
yeah, or
mask.
Miles. Yeah, exactly. Whoever's under the mask. And that it goes all the way back to the original comic days of why this character was so popular in the first place. It was
Yep.
just this normal teenage kid trapped in a world where he got bit by a radioactive spider. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
With that being, with that being said, I Craven isn't other than he's more interested in the hunt aspect and how Spider-Man plays into the world. There's no actual Peter Parker, and this could be my lack of knowledge on the character as an
Mm-hmm.
outside looking in, there's no connection. And that to me is something that is kind of vital
Yeah.
towards the character. And I this is going on a little bit of a tangent, but like you look at the Amazing Spider-Man movies,
Yeah.
and the problem is that they focus more on Oscorp than Peter himself as to how that
Yeah.
connective tissue was. Um, but I think in some aspect, it worked because it's still somewhat tied back to Peter. But needless to say, I think we're getting more of that side of Craven that I think is his strongest suits. And I
Sure.
think it
Yeah.
was the right choice to make him this looming threat before the actual threat. Um, because it's no secret. I mean, it's on the cover. It's everywhere. Venom
Yeah.
is from what I'm assuming, because I haven't gotten to this part yet, this ending portion yet.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Venom is that main villain, and you don't have to say yes or no to that. He is the true heart of this story when it comes down to how it starts to how it ends. The
Yeah.
the central conflict. That's what it's going to be. Now,
Can
in the
I can I can
meantime,
I just say something? I'm just gonna say a
sure.
couple. I'm just gonna say a couple of things, then you can keep going. Uh, First of all, if you know, you know. Second of all, holy crap, Venom.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, and that's exactly it. It's like
Like,
he's it.
I can't
Yeah,
say anything else, but just like, holy crap.
and I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, this is the thing that's been intriguing me. If Craven was, I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the first game, and I really enjoyed Miles. But if Craven was the main sticking point to this game, I don't know if I'd be so interested in it. I
That's
think
fair.
I would still play it. I would still play it, but I feel like I would be going into it like I felt with Mario Wonder, being like, I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll see. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Type of thing. Whereas I'm like, oh man, Venom is such a you know
Yeah.
powerful figure in Spider-Man's
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Well, and
And I think,
they came out swinging with the first reveal where it's like
yeah,
he bursts out of that cellar and he is in the symbiote suit and it's like, oh, we're doing this. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. That is what was teased from Spider-Man 1. It feels the actual true progression of, oh, this is where we're going to go.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't exactly
absolutely.
see that. I don't, I'm only probably 2/3 of the way through the game. I don't exactly see where we're going next yet, but I do think,
Yeah.
one thing was clear to me finishing one is that we would be getting Venom, and that's what excited me the most about this game. And so far, it's been pretty good. I liked how they introduced the symbiote and how Spider-Man gets it. Other than that, that's all I'll say in terms of narrative wise. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed this game. Um, I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts or anything,
Ooh.
Ezra, to the game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess the one thing I'll say is, we talked about game of the year watch a little bit last time, and
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely kind of holding out like, okay, yeah, Spider-Man 2 could maybe win that game of the year. And if Tears of the Kingdom hadn't come out this year, I think it would have. I think it would have won. I think
You still think Tears is going to get
I
it?
for my personal game of the year
I
list.
get you.
I think
Oh, your personal game of
yeah,
the year.
for
Okay.
I was very much for me I was sort of thinking like, oh, I'm fairly certain nothing's. I was like, I'm sure nothing's gonna beat Tears of the Kingdom, but Final Fantasy 16 and Spider-Man could. Those were kind of my two, like, okay, these are possible.
Yeah.
And I don't think Spider-Man 2 has edged it out, but I will say it would be the clear winner between it and FF16.
Yeah.
And I haven't played through Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't played through RE4 Remake. There's all sorts of stuff that I haven't played, but Tears of the Kingdom was so good. But I mean, Spider-Man 2, it's not like it's definitely like a really close second.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh man, it's such a on the gameplay front, it's such a vast improvement over the first two Spider-Man games that
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, special mention has to go to Insomniac and how just insane on a technical level they are on with this game. Like, like it is conceivably possible to go in one play session to go the entire time without seeing a single loading screen.
Yeah.
That's
crazy to think about.
Nuts. Like, and this was like the promise of the PS5 was this sort of lack of loading screens. And so I mean, if this is something that we have to look forward to in stuff like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where I mean, one of the biggest problems I would say with
is the loading.
7 Remake was, there weren't a lot of loading screens, but there were a lot of like, shimmying through walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're kind of masking the loading screen. And so if, we're starting to get to that point, like, oh, we are getting those like sort of quote unquote power of the PS5 optimized titles. And yeah, I mean, if there were ever an argument to buy a PS5, I mean, I think Spider-Man 2 certainly makes it.
Yeah. It is definitely the game for this console so far.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. God of War Ragnarok's also a great game for the PS5 too.
That come out on PS4.
Oh, it did come out on PS4 too. Yeah, it was the last one that did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good point.
If it's not an exclusive, it doesn't count.
Well, let's just put it this way. God of War Ragnarok was meant to be on PS5 only, but with the shortage, they had to quickly
port it. Yeah.
Yeah. But
we'll talk about Spider-Man spoilers.
Yeah, we'll talk more on Spider-Man. Yeah, because I'll be done with the game by that point, and I feel confident in that. It's not like I've played a really large portion, and most of it. I don't think it would take too long for me to get it done.
No,
so,
I don't think so.
But yeah, we'll talk more on Spider-Man in the next podcast, I would assume.
Yep.
And as far as next podcast goes, we'll be diving into a little bit more. We'll probably have more news to talk about. Yeah. We'll also have Missing Link to talk about because, like I said, 75% chance. And then
now I'm scared.
And I think, I don't know if we'll do this next podcast or if we'll do it the following one, but I think we're getting close to the Game Awards, so I think we're going to be transitioning more talking about the Game Awards and getting ready for that.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think around the time of next podcast, we will get the nominees. And so we will probably do like our predictions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking forward to it. it's gonna be a fun next couple podcasts. So, you know, if you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit the like button
Yep.
and subscribe. And if we really appreciate it, you listening. And honestly, it's really great to be podcasting again. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
it's fun, and if there's stuff that you want us to talk about, if there's like a game that's come out that we haven't put a spotlight on for whatever reason, and you're like, hey, we would love to know what your thoughts are. That isn't necessarily a guarantee that we'll play it, but we can at least take a look at it. Yeah, and I mean, I think we're sort of starting to get to the point where we can. I think probably in the next couple episodes, we'll probably start to take a look and say, okay, what do we want our kind of book club to look like? And
yeah, yeah,
um,
we'll be giving an announcement on that. I think very soon. Yeah,
yeah, so yeah,
how
yeah.
that's
There's
gonna go down.
there's a lot
So.
to look forward to. So I guess yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thank you all again for listening, and yeah,
All right.
y'all have a good one.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one. Thanks for listening.